Yeah, anywhere there's good. So good morning to everyone that's here at Randolph College, as well as everyone, our classmates that have been attending this series. So I'll do a little bit kind of overview introduction for the sake of those of you who turned up this morning. Then it's good also for the rest of you who have been taking this class to get a refresher overview, zoom out and look at the material from a wider, broader perspective. So anyway, I'm here with Lama Sonam and Lama Kaosang at Randolph College in Lynchburg, Virginia. My graduate school friend, Suzanne Bassinger, professor here at Randolph, invited us here to do the Sand Mandala and the associated events for this. So this is, as we all know, a complicated time to try to do something like this. And so, much thanks, Suzanne, for all your willingness to not give up. We planned this way before all of this, and then postpone, and then so here we are. Here we are safely, as you can see. So hopefully you will tolerate the kind of voice sound issue because of speaking through a mask. It's still way better to not hear so well than to be dead and not hearing at all, I think, although don't know about that side too much. They say it's not so fun. So the topic that we are covering, this is part of an ongoing class, a series that started a few months back. So this is class 27 already. So it's on this Indian Buddhist classic called The Way of the Bodhisattva, composed by Shantideva, who lived in the 8th century in northern India, in a university called Nalanda. Nalanda University in the 8th century, probably the biggest and most diverse university. Liberal arts, you know, I would say it's a liberal arts, yeah, because anyway, the biggest and most diverse university in the known world in the 8th century. And so it preceded, I think, Oxford and Cambridge as the seats of learning related to religious background, but there were also a lot of what we would now call non-religious topics taught and knowledge shared and disseminated, so at Nalanda. So Shantideva was a student at Nalanda, and the story goes that he came from a privileged background, that he was from a royal background, and exactly how privileged he was, we were not entirely sure. But the point being made was that he was someone that was sort of what we would call an untouchable, right? So his colleagues, his classmates felt that, you know, he could do whatever heck he wants and no one's going to boot him. You know, a donor's son or who knows what. Daddy dedicated 3 buildings, you know, to Nalanda. So they had the opinion that he was lazy. In fact, it is said that over time, they gave him a nickname, which in Sanskrit was Bushuku. So they call him Bushuku. And Bushuku is a contraction of 3 words, which is eating, sleeping, pooping. Because this guy only did that, according to his classmates. So, Bushuku. Okay, now I will pause, and the translators can just briefly summarize everything and explain what's going on here. Okay, so let me do one thing real quick and make sure I share it to Urban Dharma Facebook. Yeah, so anyway, back to Bushuku. His proper name was Shantideva. So the classmates finally decided, like, we're going to teach him a lesson. So probably some professors were involved in this. We're going to teach him a lesson. We're going to announce that everyone in this class will need to give a talk, a presentation. So it's presentation time, but not a group project. You have to deliver something. So they say, okay, starting with you. Shantideva. So fully and totally expecting that he's going to make a fool of himself, he sat where they arranged for him to teach, and they said that he then extemporaneously 10 chapters of this book he recited in verse and kind of composed on the spot. The other thing that happened was that it said that as he was composing and sharing this, his classmates started to notice that he was levitating on his seat. And up to like this dramatic effect of like chapter 9. In chapter 9, the chapter on wisdom, the verse was something like, when the one doing the apprehendings, like the one doing the seeing, for example, and what is seen is both understood as empty, that's the vocabulary used, but be careful, they're not talking about not there literally, but when the one perceiving and what is being perceived is understood to be empty, which is understood to be interdependent. There are no things existing in the abstract out there, separated from the perception that is taking place, right? But for dramatic effect, right? He used the word emptiness or empty, and he also proofed. So his classmates couldn't see him, but could hear him teach, because there's still half that chapter left, and then there's the 10th chapter, and he concluded it, and then he disappeared. And then years later, people reported seeing him, in Florida. No, I'm in South India. That he had wandered off in those regions. So anyway, this is the text, The Way of the Bodhisattva. If you'll get a chance to, click on Amazon late night board, it's worth clicking this and getting this book. Many Buddhist teachers, big names, small names, have repeatedly said that this is the one text that has been extremely helpful in extremely helpful in navigating through our confusions and our stresses and our, yada, yada, yada. And good perspective comes from here. So at this point, we are in the chapter called Patience, which is chapter 6 of this text. So during the translation, I was sharing with the group gathered here, I said, in answering a question, why is this such a fundamental text, so important? I said that, for example, one example would be His Holiness the Dalai Lama has said that, putting aside what my followers, my Tibetan followers think about me, and this whole thing about many lifetimes, reincarnation of a great being and all of that, he said, put that aside because, that's kind of a faith issue. He said, whatever qualities that you admire about me or you think that I have, he says, it is because of this book. He said that, he says, what I do know for certain, what I can tell you for certain is in this lifetime, it's reading this book is continuously trying to align the way I conduct myself, my inner life, my outer life, according to this book, that this is what you're seeing. Okay, so we in class, as I said, we are now going through around the first third of the chapter. That the title of this chapter is usually translated as patience, and the Sanskrit is kashanti, which is related to the word shanti, which means peace, which means not triggered, in a state of being at rest. So already in class we have seen how the English word patience has a much more limited range in terms of what it's communicating. That kashanti has a broader kind of scope, and that it is said that kashanti counteracts, or the traditional Buddhist word is like it's an antidote. So even the word antidote communicates like the flavor of the Buddhist teachings. And so the notion that we need antidote is basically saying that we have been poisoned. And so that also tells us that these poisons are not like natural in our system. So we are fundamentally good. We said that we have fundamental good, all of us. We all began that way. There is this fundamental goodness. In Buddhist vocabulary, we call this Buddhist expression, we call this our Buddha nature. Or you could say your divine nature. That core is this fundamental goodness. But due to conditions, external conditions, circumstantial conditions, we've been poisoned. And as long as the poisons is in the system, we need to apply antidotes to neutralize this poison. So the poison that Kshanti is an antidote to is, again, then you see also the limits of that word. In English, it's said to be anger. Anger. But this anger, as it turns out, there are many things we can say about this anger. So through this chapter, basically we get introduced to a more nuanced understanding of anger, like the various types and textures of anger. We've talked about the noisy anger, which is what we are used to. Then there's the silent anger, very quietly. I compared it to like forest fires, they die down, right? But they are deep down there, and in the floor, several feet down, in fact. And then when the conditions are right, the fires will restart. I know that in Southeast Asia, where I come from, every year, because of the burning of these forests. So the anger has all these kind of different textures. And then we also looked at from Shantideva, where he identifies where this anger, both the loud and the silent, the obvious and the not so obvious, where all these come from. Very interesting in that one verse, I think the class would remember. He basically says that anger comes from desire met with frustration. Desire that cannot be fulfilled turns into frustration. Frustration that festers turns into anger. So he gives a good analysis of all of that. So right now we have reached this section where he says how to train to have Kshanti, forbearance, patience, towards those who treat us with contempt. This is the section that we're in now. Okay, so now let us read 52 to 63. This is the section. Because the mind is bodiless, it cannot be destroyed by anyone. Because of mind's attachment to the body, this body is oppressed by pain. Scorn and hostile words and comments that I do not like to hear, my body is not harmed by them. What reason do you have, O mind, for your resentment? The enmity that others show me, since in this or future lives, cannot actually devour me. Why should I be so adverse to it? Perhaps I turn from it because it hinders me from having what I want. That's sort of frustration. But all my property I'll leave behind, while evil deeds will keep me steady company. Better for me to die today than live a long and wicked life. However long the days of those like me, the pain of dying will be all the same. One man dreams he lives 100 years of happiness, but then he wakes. Another dreams an instant's joy, and then he likewise wakes. And when they awake, the happiness of both is finished, never to return. Likewise, when the hour of death comes around, our lives are over, whether brief or long. Though we be rich in worldly goods, delighting in our wealth for many years, despoiled and stripped as though by thieves, we must go naked and with empty hands. Perhaps we'll claim that by our wealth we live, and living gather merit, dissipating evil. But if we are aggressive for the sake of profit, won't our gains be evil and our so-called merits lost? And if the aim for which we live is thereby wasted and undone, what use is there in living thus, when evil is the only consequence? And if, when people slander us, we claim our anger is because they injure others, how is it we do not resent their slander when it's aimed at someone else? And if we bear with this antipathy because it is due to other factors, why are we impatient when they slander us? Defilement, after all, has been the cause of it. So this is the section. So the first thing to note, the first thing to say here, is Shantideva is first in this section starts off by pointing to death, right, as the end kind of point of this life. So on the surface, it seems like, it's not that much fun hanging out with this guy. It's like, oh, you're so negative. But as with all these teachings, they are a strategy. They are reminders. So this is sort of in the face of, like this section it says, right, those who treat us with contempt. Especially like the recent politics. When we hear so and so voted this way or that way, we may know or may not know that person. Instantly it is felt like they're treating me with contempt. Shantideva says, at that time, do you remember that we all die? And this is actually already in the Dhammapada. There is, like the Dhammapada, a compendium of the words of the Buddha, where it says, only fools who forget that we all die bother to squabble and fight over nothing in particular. So even on the surface, it sounds like he's so negative. Actually, he's saying, don't waste your energy on fighting over meaningless things, because we all die. So the other side of these words, elsewhere in this book, in this teaching, he's saying, spend it on being kind. Spend your energy on loving, caring, being kind. Right? That he doesn't say, oh, why? What's the point? You're going to die. So here, when seemingly he sounds so negative, it's not because, he has the view that, everything is meaningless. He's using this emotion of like, everything is useless to break our obsession with getting upset because I've been insulted. Getting upset because my values, which obviously is good for the world, those over there are against. He says, that's useless. Don't do that. Overall, this is what this section is doing. Okay, so here he says, he begins 52, he says, so basically he says the mind doesn't have a body, because in the earlier section, right before that, he's talking about the body. And so he starts off earlier on by talking about the harm that is experienced by the body. Yeah, so if you remember, right, he talked about somebody, uses a stick to beat your body. Then he says, who are you angry at? Then he said, well, I'm angry at the guy who took the stick to beat me. He says, but then it's not, it's the stick that hurt you, not the guy. And I said, well, yeah, I know that, but the stick, by itself wouldn't hit me, It's the guy who wielded the stick. And he says, okay, fair enough, right? Who wielded the guy? You're like, what? What do you mean, who wielded the guy? And it's like, the poisons, the afflictive emotions, the mental defilements caught up in that moment controlled the guy who controlled the stick. And then the stick meets the body. So then pain turns up. Then he said, now, furthermore, he said, the guy has wielded a stick, you have wielded a body. So, who is at fault here? His point is not that you are at fault. His point is, there's no point assigning fault. Yeah? So he talked a lot about the body being harmed in the section before. Now he's talking in this section about the mind being harmed. Earlier section it's about like sticks and stones. Now it's about words. Or our perception of people's intentions, people's contempt for us. And so basically he's saying, now, as for the mind, it says the mind doesn't have a body. It cannot be destroyed by anyone. But because of the mind's attachment to the body, because the way that the mind is habitually identifying with the body, so then the body becomes a source of pain. Verse 53, scorn and hostile words and comments that I do not like to hear. My body is not harmed by them. So this is the sticks and stones, you know. So here it says, but, so what reason, O mind, addressing the mind, what reason do you have resentment? Somebody says a word to us, you know, because they are not in a good state of mind. They say something to us, and we carry that the whole day. But this person has moved on. In all likelihood, don't even remember what they said to you. But we carry this the whole day. And so you just let your whole day be ruined by this one comment. So we carry around, so much. And then we wonder why we are exhausted, why we are fatigued, why we are traumatized. Because we go around collecting suffering. And what the Buddha is teaching is, drop it. Drop it. Again, it's not saying, that there aren't things that especially if it's within your job description, right? So the IT people cannot say, oh yeah, just drop it, like sometimes the sound works, sometimes it doesn't work. Yeah, just chill, No, we all do what we have elected to do in our lives, and we have to attend to all those things, but so that layer is not what Shantideva is really addressing. He's addressing in a way, a deeper layer where we waste so much of our energy, of our focus, of our passion, of our intentions, that are noble, using the word noble, or good, from the good heart. So much of it gets dissipated by unskillfully picking up suffering. Left, right, up, down. Yes, exactly, Joyce. I thought I said it out loud, but Lawrence, don't worry. I'm multitasking, and we're in translation mode. I have an audience here. Unlike the Buddhists, I cannot do powerful Jedi mind tricks, but I try. And to be simultaneously present in different places. But because my skill is not as perfect, so it causes some confusion from time to time. They have gotten used to in other days when translation mode is going on, I sit, serenely, very impressive, very relaxed. But now, while I'm pausing for the translation, I'm filling in the gaps for the audience, the live audience here, as to what's going on in this text. So anyway, coming back to here. So 54, the enmity that others show me, since in this or future lives, it cannot actually devour me, why should I be adverse to it? So that same point, right? And then he says, perhaps I turn from it because it hinders me from wanting what I want. So that's going back to that point. That we get upset, we cannot accept because our desires are being frustrated. I cannot get what I want. Right? More literally here is like, I cannot achieve the obtaining the stuff I want. So then he says, but all my property I'll leave behind. Right? And not only that, in this like almost single-minded pursuit of stuff, And he says, yes, I get it, you think that these things, the stuff is what you need. Beyond that, you say, not just me, my family needs all this stuff. He says, but in the course of pursuing this stuff and getting upset with what you perceive others' contempt for you is preventing you from successfully amassing all this stuff. And he says, like, is this really what we need? We spend the first third of our lives learning how to get stuff. We spend the next third of our lives getting stuff and managing stuff. Then we spend the last third of our life figuring out what to do with this stuff. And as we lay there dying, we worry, who is going to do what with my stuff? So everyone's autobiography is more or less the same narrative, with different characters coming in and out, different locations turning up. But otherwise, right? Learning how to get stuff, getting stuff, losing stuff, managing stuff, getting rid of stuff, and then you're dead. And then other people need to figure out what to do with your stuff. Meanwhile, we're running out of places for landfills. There is no way. "100 years ago, we can live under the delusion that, there is like, oh, throw that away. There is no away. And so, here Shantideva says, a lot of times when we get upset is because we feel threatened. We perceive whatever other people is doing to us as getting in the way of us getting stuff. And he says, that's pointless. So 56, it's kind of a hyperbole here. Better for me to die today than live a long and wicked life. Evil and the wicked is used in these texts, but they are not talking about what we conventionally think as like, morality and there are connections to that, but here in Buddhist text, Buddhist tradition, evil is defined as that which brings suffering. That which brings suffering to ourselves, that which brings suffering to others. And so he says, what's the point of living a long and evil life? Because the whole purpose of even having a long life is so that, you actually enjoy it. We work so hard to make enough money to hope to afford insurance that will pay for the bills for working so hard. No particular reason. So he says, you can live for so long, but you have lived not just a meaningless life, but a life that has been destructive for yourself and for others. And he says, what's the point? Better to just end it. Of course, not literally. He's making a point, Better for me to die today than to do all of this and create more suffering in the world for yourself, for others. 56. So I found the verse in the Dhammapada. It's actually the opening chapter that says, "Never by hatred is hatred conquered, but by readiness to love alone. This is eternal law. Those who are contentious have forgotten that we all die. For the wise who reflect on this fact, there are no quarrels." "56 and 58 verses 57 and 58, Shantideva basically compares or makes the case that, whether you dream that you have lived for 100 years happily, or another person dreams that they have had one moment of joy, both wakes up, and what he's doing here, he's saying, again, none of this, right, is like look at things from one point. Again, this is a style in the Buddha's teachings. It's like the Buddha is constantly telling us that when we look at it from different directions, then we get the whole picture becomes clearer and clearer. So the Buddhist tradition also makes use of that story about an elephant being brought in the room, and there's 10 blind people asked to, what is an elephant? Oh, elephant is like a trunk, elephant is like a fan, elephant is, And so it's saying that we are blind to reality. And so having more perspective is good because it can lead to a clearer understanding of what is. So the consideration in this section, again, don't want you to, especially you just happen to swing by to think, oh yeah, those Buddhists, they're real party poopers, They keep sobering you with buckets and buckets of ice water. Although these buckets of ice water, really, if you look at it from another perspective, it's like, what about it is not true? So one time, many years back, when I was teaching at Davidson College, a student, after class, he came up to me, he looked a little kind of depressed, a little sad, and I said, "So what's up?" He said, "Yeah, he said, I get it, what it's saying, but I don't like it." I said, "Why not?" And he said, it says, all meetings end with partings. All gathering ends with, dispersing. I said, "Yeah, I don't like it too." And he said, "And so, why are you following this?" I said, "I'm not following this as in, like trying to make all meetings part." So anyway, I issued him a challenge and I said, "Okay, right now, if any of these things that we just talked about is untrue, that you can prove to me, I will stop being Buddhist right now, right here. So he goes, okay. You go, here, oh, no. Here, oh, no. You know, it's like, it's true. It is true that we all die. But we don't want to think about it. And when we think about it, we think the wrong way about it. So often the Buddha brings the things that is true, but we don't want to think about it. And then we think that the other way of thinking is normal, which is to ignore all the signs, all those indications that give us a more complete view of what this is about. No, don't want to talk about it. So here especially, it's saying, you need to understand. And once you understand that, we all taste the same to those worms. That's why, especially in the Muslim tradition, okay, putting aside the Taj Mahal, that was a weird exception. But in the Muslim tradition, everybody from king to the lowest pauper have to be buried in the exact same way. Shroud, put in the ground, tombstone this size, this look. That's it. It's a reminder to all of us. We all die the same way. We are dead the same way. And this is not about being obsessed about death. It's that understanding, that reflection should have an impact on how we live. So this is about living. This is not about an obsession with death. But reorienting our relationship with death can make us live better, which is what Shantideva is doing here. verse 60 perhaps will claim that by our wealth we live, and living gather merit, dissipating evil. But if we are aggressive for the sake of profit, won't our gains be evil, our merits lost? Yeah, so verse 60, it's again remembering that Shantideva is addressing his colleagues, right, his fellow monks. And they say, so some of you might think, well, I need stuff, I need wealth, because if I can live well, I can accumulate merit. This is religious language, right? I can do good deeds, I can accumulate merit, and in doing so, then I can overcome that which is not good. So then the equivalent for us is like we have this kind of thinking. It might not be that language, but we say to ourselves, we say to others, well, I need to do these things because it's a good thing. When I have all these resources, when I have all these connections, when I have all this education, when I have all this network, I can do good in the world. So the next part he says, but if we are aggressive for even this sake, then what we will gain, is that really good? Is it really good? What kind of good are we talking about at that point? And so he's cautioning us that we often can tell stories. There are good stories and there are bad stories. Bad stories are stories that we tell to delude ourselves. Worse than a charlatan is a charlatan that doesn't know that they are a charlatan. On the surface, you would say like worse than a charlatan, or between the two, you think a charlatan is worse. That a charlatan who knows that he or she is a charlatan is not so bad, because we're like, oh well, because he didn't intend it, But from another perspective, it's if at least it's less damaging. So often that we begin with good intentions. In fact, I would say we all begin with good intentions. Is the difference. So I think lost you guys temporarily. Can you all tell me what you heard last?
When you said something about good intentions, can you hear me, Dr. Lai?
Hold on. Yeah, Antonio, can you tell me what you heard last?
Yeah, when you were talking about good intentions, you were talking about Shantideva cautioning us about
Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. So let me briefly repeat that. So in the Buddhist teachings, it says that like often, if not all the time, the actions that we do, the things that we do, comes from this one place, and this place is that place of basic goodness, and that basic goodness is what says that we all want to be happy, we don't want suffering. So from the greatest saint that you can think of and the proverbial, greatest sinner, evil, Hitler, etc., that you can think of, they all started from the same place. And there is nothing wrong about wanting to be happy and not wanting suffering, because it's inbuilt. Nobody taught us that. You don't need to go to school for that. It's instinctive. Where it goes wrong is in the pursuit of happiness and in wanting to be free from suffering. We take different routes. And that is due to knowing or not knowing. So the Buddha identifies confusion as the basic problem, or ignorance as the basic problem. So he doesn't use the language of sin, he doesn't use the language of disobedience, right, going against God's will or anything like that. He uses a different vocabulary. He says it's because of being ignorant of the way things are. But insofar as motivation, wanting to be happy and not wanting to suffer doesn't make you a bad person. That's natural. So what we need to pay attention to is, how do we go about being true to that which is innate to us? We want to be happy, we don't want to suffer. Okay, so today with the Zoom class, we're going to end here. Normally, as you know, we would take a break half an hour ago, but today we didn't do that. So we're just going to end earlier. A reminder that Saturday we don't have class. Last Saturday we didn't have class because I was leading a retreat. This Saturday we won't have class, not because of Sand Mandala. This Saturday, well, Sand Mandala, by the way, if you're here, Sand Mandala is going on, but myself, I have to go to New York and officiate a wedding. So, different things to do. It's like the COVID window. Everyone is trying to get things done before it gets worse. We never know what's happening next. So tata everyone on Zoom and on Facebook, and so no class this coming Saturday, but we will continue next Tuesday.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Gracias,
Lai.
Dr. Lai. Bye.
Gracias.
Bye.
Bye bye, tata. Buenas tardes.
Gracias.
Bye.